What's up, everybody? I'm Josh Meek, the Uber Geek. Welcome to Pretty Dece, your daily entertainment and pop culture show. Now, if you're anything like me, you're a big fan of binge-watching television shows. That in general is just kind of how we partake of media in general nowadays. Most people aren't watching things week to week. You know, they're watching things on Netflix. They're watching things on Hulu. They're kind of taking in an entire season at once. That's become more and more the norm as the years have gone on, and as streaming could become more and more of a thing that is happening here in the world. So much so that you look at places like Netflix and they just put out an entire season all at once, and you can just watch it at your own pace. And increasingly, people's paces are as fast as they possibly can, making it through an entire season or an entire series over the course of like a weekend, for example. Well, there's a new story out in The Atlantic today, and is kind of covering some research that happened at the University of Melbourne, which says that is definitely the worst way that you can partake of media. Super interesting stuff, but they ran a study, and they had some people in the study who were binge watching a TV show, so watched everything over the course of, a very short period of time. And then some other people in the study who watched the same content over the course of like one episode per week. They quizzed those people when they got done watching, so like the day after they got done watching, and then again 140 days after they got done watching. And guess what? Turns out the people who watched the show week to week, waiting entire weeks between episodes, they retained more of that information. You see, when you watch a show and you take it all in all at once over the course of a few days, it doesn't leave your sort of working memory. You don't have time to kind of mull over that information, to accept it into your longer term memory. It stays all up there quickly in your working memory and then is quickly forgotten. There's something called the forgetting curve, where over the course of 24 hours after learning something, that's where the majority of it will be lost. So, the majority happens over 24 hours, and then it kind of continues from there. If you don't review within that first 24 hours, you will lose the majority of what you have learned. Anyone who's crammed for a test in high school or college knows this firsthand. You stay up all night the night before, learning all the information you can. You show up to the test, you feel like you know everything. And then a week later, it's as if you never took the test. It's as if you never studied. That information is not retained. Of course, people have known in a classroom setting this information for a long time. This is why we take notes. This is why we review material over and over again. This is why you take a class and you only read 3 chapters a week, and then you talk about all those chapters in class over and over again, so that information gets drilled into you, so you retain that information. But that's certainly not how we partake of media nowadays. We simply cram as much in as we can. We try to just hit maximum overload, and it ends up meaning we don't retain any of this knowledge. This is certainly an interesting topic, talking about memory as it pertains to media and as it pertains to pop culture. There's so much more that we can experience nowadays. If you look back at, for example, when our parents grew up, they had just a handful of TV shows. They had a handful of albums that were coming out every week. There was just not a ton of media that they could experience on a day-to-day basis. Cut to today, you have the vast expanse of the internet. There's more content being uploaded per day to YouTube than a person could watch in an entire lifetime. And a lot of people, myself included, try to partake of as much of that as they possibly can, and we're certainly not remembering all of it anymore. However, the other flip side is that as we use the internet more and the internet becomes more and more of a kind of store of knowledge, that becomes less of a problem, that we don't remember things, that we don't recall things. You see that we have recall memory. That's what's becoming less and less important versus what's being called our kind of externalized memory. That is, we don't necessarily remember everything anymore, but we know where to go access that information. We know where to go get that information. You might not know who won the 1984 World Series, but you know exactly where to go look that info up. In a sense, the internet has become an extension of your memory. It's become an extension of your brain. And that's a very powerful place to be. However, the flip side of that is we can't go all the way, right? Like, you can't just completely offload your brain onto the internet, because what happens when the internet's not there one day? What happens when you don't have self-service and you need, desperate information that you simply don't have contained in your brain any longer? So there's certainly a balance that needs to be struck there, but memory research as it pertains to the internet and as it pertains to our media consumption is a fascinating topic. So I highly suggest anyone who's interested in this, go check out that article on The Atlantic and go read that research that's going on about memory right now. It's all very, very fascinating. And it's certainly fun to find out why every time a new season comes out on Netflix of a Netflix original, I feel the need to suddenly rewatch all the previous seasons. It's because I remember nothing. So that's going to do it for Pretty Dece for today. Thank you very much for joining me. Make sure that you like Pretty Dece on Facebook, facebook.com/PrettyDeceShow. Follow me on Twitter @PrettyDeceShow and visit PrettyDeceShow.com. I'll be back tomorrow for another daily episode. In the meantime, make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel, to the podcast, and on the Anchor app so you never miss any of the content.